You're listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast, featuring real business owners telling real stories about their real business experiences. Here are your hosts, John Chiappetta and Eric Jorn.
Welcome, listeners. Thanks for coming back. Today on the show, we have Diane Yetter from Yetter Tax and the Sales Tax Institute. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Well, don't forget we have our guest co-host today, Nick.
We do have another guest co-host, Nick Grinley, manager.
Happy to be here.
Guys and CPAs and advisors. We have a room full of CPAs today. It's going to be an interesting show.
Yes, we do.
All right, Diane. Hey, can you tell us your story? How'd you get here? What's your business? What do you do?
So my business is I'm actually a sales tax consultant and educator. So I am a CPA by trade, by training, and have had my business for a little over 26 years. And we help businesses make sure that they are compliant with sales tax. So we do that through consultations. We do that through helping them understand where they have to collect tax, doing a nexus study, what's taxable that they buy and sell. We help them if, God forbid, a state comes and does an audit. We help them get registered for sales tax. And then we also help put in systems. So we're partners with the major sales tax software providers. So we help businesses figure out which one is best suited for their requirements and their needs. And then we are certified partners with all the major providers, so we can help implement that. And then on the training side, we run the Sales Tax Institute, where we have a number of free resources on our website, as well as offering online live classes, on-demand webinars, live webinars, and live in-person. We're back to live in-person training classes.
Very cool. And I will attest, having your resources available are so important for us, because I don't ever want to go through another state sales tax audit again.
I wish I would have known you back in the day. We had a sales tax audit, and I was working for a company, and we got just plowed. I mean, for better or lack of better words, but yeah, it was a grueling experience. That was a state of Illinois audit.
Yeah, and we partner with a lot of firms like you guys, because you do so many things and we do one thing. And so we know sales tax inside and out. We actually cover all of the U.S., plus we do some Canada and some international. And we have partners in those other countries that we can bring in when we need help. We actually have a new partner in Puerto Rico, so we can now help people with more ease in Puerto Rico, because they are a bit challenging to do business with. But it's all we do. I don't do income tax. I don't do payroll tax. I don't do property tax. I don't do general bookkeeping. And so we partner with a lot of other accounting firms and bookkeeping firms that do all of those great services for their clients. You guys do my stuff for me. Even though I'm a CPA, I have a CPA. And it's because I'm better doing what I do best, and you guys are better doing what you do best.
Yeah, that's huge. So many people, maybe their spouse is a CPA and they work for a big company. Maybe they work in finance. Automatically, you're an accountant. Small business. Small business tax. I mean, it's different, right? When you're in the realities, when you're dealing with the IRS, you know what they're doing. You can almost anticipate some of the things that could happen. If you're outside of that, it's totally different.
It's totally different. I have friends and even family. Can you help me with this income tax question? And I've run some of those by Nick. Like, can you? It's not mine, but it's my dad. Can you help? Because that's not what I do.
Just a couple.
Yes, just a few.
So how did you get started?
So right out of college, my first job was on the evil side. I was an auditor for the state of Kansas. So that was my first job out of school. And I did that for about 2.5 years. And then one of the companies that I audited was up here in Chicago, the Quaker Oats Company. And that's how I got up to Chicago. So I came up here in 1988. and worked for them for a little over a year. And that was right when the accounting firms, the big accounting firms, were starting to create state tax practices in the late 80s. And so I got hired by Arthur Andersen, and I spent about 7.5 years with them building their sales tax practice. So I was one of the lead people in the firm. I was one of the co-leaders of the Chicago practice. We really didn't have one leader there. And so I was doing that. And in the mid-90s, we started partnering with one of the major sales tax software companies, Vertex, and we were helping them do training. This is pre-Y2K, if everybody remembers that. Not everybody does. But all the companies were having to replace their legacy mainframe custom systems that had sales tax functionality built in, and they were going to one of the two, because back then there were only two sales tax software providers, and they were just bombarded with requests for training. So they partnered with 3 of the accounting firms at the time, and I was the lead person with Arthur Andersen to train their customers. And after 4 or 5 months, I went to my partner and said, this is where we need to be. We need to figure out how to build a practice out of doing this. Let me lead it. And they said, yeah, I don't think that's where it's going to go. I think this is a flash in the pan. This isn't, no. And I went and I talked to friends that had their own businesses, had left Andersen, and they said, Diane, you can do this. You're right. And so in summer of 96, I left and started my firm, and that software company didn't want to lose me as a trainer, so they actually hired me as a contract trainer. And so I had guaranteed work 2 weeks a month. I ate really good when I was out training, and I ate macaroni and cheese and hot dogs the other 2 weeks of the month at the beginning. And so that started in August, and by December I had my first client to do consultation work with.
Wow, that's a good way to get started.
It is.
Good, solid, repetitive work. It's hard to start off that way. How did you feel when you were making the jump from, what sounds like a really prestigious position inside a large organization off to the abyss of entrepreneurship?
It was a little bit scary, but as I said, I had a couple of friends that had left Andersen and gone out and started their own consulting businesses. And so I had them as resources. The first supplier I hired was you guys, back when it was, Hamlin. And so Clay was my first accountant that took care of us. And, so I had him to help me navigate some of that, but there's a lot of it, early on I had a lot of people say, how did you know what to do? And I really have to credit my undergraduate degree that, it was a really broad-based. I have a double major, accounting and business administration. So I had classes in marketing and finance and certainly accounting, HR, strategy, all of those sorts of things. So all of those kind of came into play. Plus, having been a consultant, I saw how businesses ran. Granted, working for Arthur Andersen, my clients were very large companies, didn't have a whole lot of small business clients, but I understand how business had to run. So for a little tiny business at the beginning, it was just me, I had a lot of processes and things in place because that's what I knew. And so I think that helped me not be as nervous about starting a business because I had kind of everything lined up of, okay, I know I need to have an accountant. I know I need to file tax returns. At the beginning, as I was a sole prop, so I wasn't doing withholding, but that changed in less than a year when I had my first employee. So as soon as we did that, we incorporated, set up payroll, all of those different things. But I think it was my training, my education, and then also just having been an advisor to businesses gave me kind of that comfort level. And then having good advisors around me to help.
Definitely. I feel like that's a common challenge for new business owners, right? It all moves so fast, right?
It does move fast.
You're like, oh, my first tax return's due. And then, I hired an employee. Now I have to pay payroll and I have to now sales tax and now second location. And HR, and next thing you know, you're running a complex organization. In the meantime, you're just trying to build your product, your service, processes, procedures to deliver consistently. It's a challenge.
Exactly. And so I started in summer of 96. Summer of 97, I hired my first employee, and that first employee was actually out of state. So very early, and unfortunately in California. So very early, I had a very complex business. Now, the one thing I didn't have is sales tax. Professional services are, for the most part, protected from sales tax. So I didn't have to worry about collecting sales tax. And my sales tax knowledge has helped me make sure to keep track of what I want to be in the business of doing and what I don't want to be in the business of doing. Because although I do sales tax, it is not easy. And so we do everything we can to try to avoid being subject to sales tax.
Well, I find it interesting you started building your team early on, though. I think that's a pretty key point for a lot of business owners. And they think, I don't have any money to do this or stuff like that. But you want to start getting that the group of people that are going to help you get to that next level.
Yeah, and I think what's a little bit different about being in a consulting business versus being in, say, a retail store is my product are people's hours. And so if I only limit it to myself, I have a limit to my earning capacity, because although I do work a lot of hours, Nick can probably attest to seeing what time a lot of my emails come to him, you're limited. There's only so many hours you can actually work and be productive. You can work more, but you may not be as productive. And if you're doing client work, you need to make sure that you're alert when you're doing that, which is why my emails to Nick are, the midnight or after time, and on the weekends. But, if I didn't add people, I couldn't grow that revenue line. And that's a little different. When you're adding, like right now, we're actually adding a lot of overhead people. We're adding marketing people and project managers. But we're up to 6 consulting people right now. I've been bigger. I've kind of had some ebbs and flows in the business, but we're up to 6 consulting people right now.
Right.
And we need to add some of those overhead people, and that is nerve-wracking. But what I have to keep in mind is if I want to have my revenue-generating people spending more of their hours of the day, then hiring a project manager that takes some of that project management off of my managers so that they can do more billable work. And hopefully that project manager, I'm going to be able to get some billable hours out of them. And then on the marketing side, because of our Sales Tax Institute, they really are the people that generate that revenue. So that used to be a very, very small piece of our business, 5% of our revenue. This year it was 35 to 40%. So it has really, really grown. Right. So now to have, I only had, it's sometimes a half-time marketing person. Now I just hired 2 interns that are going to work on that. Plus we have a full-time person, and we're looking for 1 more full-time manager to help us really grow that side of the business. And what's great about that is we've figured out that's a way to make money without needing hours.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just, you're talking before, you have a whole 100% virtual team.
We are a 100% virtual team and have been since, I've had some virtual people my entire history.
Yeah.
And then in 2010, we went 100% virtual.
2010, so it wasn't just, COVID that drove it.
It wasn't COVID, no.
Your first employee was a remote employee from California.
Right.
And you're a pioneer.
Yeah. And then my next, and that was not a full-time employee. My first full-time employee that I hired in 98, he actually lived in Atlanta.
Okay. Wow.
And so from 1998 until today, I have always had, now from 2010 to 2014, there was just 2 of us, and we were both here in Chicago, but each working out of our own home. So I haven't had an office since 2010.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say that's actually pretty cool. I mean, I'm thinking about the management because, I think a lot of firms today are struggling with virtual employees. What were some of the things that you were using as tools to help manage your employee base?
So pre-pandemic, all of my employees were all in Illinois up until 2019. I think 2019 I had one person that was in Seattle. But everybody else was here in the Chicago area. And so what we did was once a week, I had a one-on-one in-person meeting with each person. They came to my house and we met. And then once a month, all of us came together. So at that time, there was 4 or 5 of us. And so once a week, I was face-to-face with somebody where we'd talk about projects. We would, just get to see what's going on, what help do they need. And now, and with the pandemic, and also then once we hired people out of state, we're doing that virtually. So it's a video call. During the pandemic, we hired people without ever having met them physically in person. Obviously, all the interviewing done remotely. But now that we're out of pandemic, once a quarter we bring the whole team together. We actually have the whole team coming in next week, so not a very revenue generating week, and a very expensive week, but I think it's really important to do that. It's really important to have those times if you are a virtual firm or a hybrid firm that you do have to bring the people together face to face, because that's how you get a lot of great collaboration. It's how you actually get learning that happens with the younger people, and how you build a team and your culture and everything else that really goes towards making you successful. I don't think you have to have a building or an office suite that you come to every single day to do that. We live on Slack. Two people are working on a project together and they are jumping on Slack on a video call and working it out together. So that's a lot of what we do.
We've made that migration as well, where we're heavy Microsoft Teams based. I walk across the office and I see people on video calls all day long, and I'm like, this is just such a different change than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But everybody's all in on it. You already answered one of my questions of how do you integrate fully remote employees that are far away into your culture, bring them in once a quarter. That's really important. And I know those dollars hurt, but it's so invaluable. That's cool that you did that.
Yeah, and on the off months, now we didn't get everybody in Q3 of this year. Just the timing is hard. We have a lot of conferences in September and October. It was just really hard to get everybody in. But what we do is the non-months when we're not in, we actually have a all-company meeting that happens. It's usually about an hour and a half. And so we do that where everybody gets together. And we do things like, every staff meeting that we start out with what are your celebrations and thank yous? So what are you celebrating over the last month? What do you think happened? Usually it's something that the team has accomplished. And then the thank yous, it's thanking different people for things that they did to help support them or something, great that they did. So we really have integrated that into our culture, that we really do work as a team and we celebrate together and we appreciate together.
Wow.
That's a great culture right there. I think there's a lot of warmth to that, and I think a lot of people are looking for that these days. So that's actually really cool.
Yeah, it's we've worked really hard on our culture over the last couple of years. We do things like we have a book club. So this year we will have read 5 books, and they vary. The book we're reading that I need to finish this weekend is Justice Sotomayor's autobiography. So reading inspirational things, but the last one we read was Senator Chris Murphy's book on the violence inside us. So we tackle hard subjects like that. We've also done books on how to give feedback, so also leadership and work skills. So we do kind of a real gamut of different topics that we cover in the book club.
Wow, that's very interesting. Well, we've run book clubs sometimes we go on a long streak where we're capturing a lot of books and reading them as a group, and then other times it kind of falls off, and then we get back on. But I enjoy reading books, and I like the accountability of having that group read. Like, I know we're going to meet about this. I got to finish reading this book, because sometimes I can fall off of reading a book like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I've got a bit of reading to do this weekend. It's a great story, and hearing her background, I just have been really busy, so I've got some reading to do this weekend.
We probably all do.
It's funny, is I just started listening and doing some audio. I really don't like it so much, but I did it for just because I'm in the car or something like that, and I'm like, obviously you can't read when you drive, but I've tried.
Reading while you drive? I hope not.
No, it's just the audiobook is, I prefer the actual book in itself, but that seems to be kind of where I'm at right now. Just seems to be helping me catch up on some reading I have not been able to get to whatsoever.
Yeah, I haven't been able to do an audiobook. If I'm listening to something, I'm doing something else. Like, I can't just sit and listen. And so then I'm not fully paying attention. And then something will happen. I'm like, wait a minute, where did that come from? And, I think the book, I had always been a physical book reader. And then I sent my tax stuff in early enough. Nick's looking at me like, what? Something happened? It was my questionnaire that came in early enough that I won the iPad one year. And so I now do my books on Kindle. But these business books, because I like to highlight and do different things, Kindle just doesn't do that very well. So I do physical books for our book club.
Yeah, I bounce back and forth, but I think I prefer the paperback books. You could take it anywhere. If I'm out by a pool, go to a beach. That's when I usually read a book or two on vacation, or if I travel to a conference. And I've tried lugging the iPad around for that, and then you get glare, and it's too hard to manage. It's too inconvenient. But I do like, and I also don't need the availability of other things on the iPad. It's too distracting for me.
See, I'm not an Apple person. So the only thing I do on my iPad is my Kindle or my Netflix. I think my mail is loaded on there, but I don't know that it's actually, like, the password is remembered or anything. So then I'd have to figure out what the password is to get into that. But the reason I like to read on vacation on my Kindle, or even when I travel, my bag is usually pretty full with other stuff, and to bring enough books, if you're going on vacation, that's a lot of additional weight to bring, where the iPad is easy.
I've evolved into the new century so well that I've Amazon Primed books in the middle of a trip.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a new world. I did my first Instacart delivery when I was out at a conference, because we were there for a week. I did a DoorDash delivery of groceries, and I'm like, this feels so weird.
Yes.
But it was nice, you get sick of eating out when you're out all the time, and it was nice just to get some regular groceries and eat some normal food in between, and it was kind of a nice luxury.
Yeah. All kinds of sales tax issues with it.
That's actually an interesting topic right there. DoorDash in itself.
That's not a business that I'm planning to invest in, is one that utilizes DoorDash or Uber Eats. Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's added complexity at the even on the accounting level for us. I mean, it's something that we're dealing with where everybody's treatment is a little bit different. How they ring it up in their POS is different. And it's just another added layer of complexity, and something that used to be so simple, right? It used to be cash, check. Then they introduced credit card. Now they got DoorDash. You got online ordering. You got that platform. So you have all these different sources where you can collect your money from. And now even worse is some of them collect sales tax for you and remit it. Some don't. What do? That's why you made the right bet. This was not a flash in the pan.
Yeah, well, funny story, when I started the business, so Clay and I were at Arthur Andersen together. We actually did our Masters of Tax program together. We both left Andersen at about the same time. Clay came to join his dad. Here in the firm, I went out and started my sales tax practice. and I hired Clay. I said, I need an accountant. And his dad, Jim, said, I don't know that we should take her on. What? How can she run a business just doing sales tax? What? There's no value. How is she going to make any money? And, fast forward 26 years later, I'm still here doing well. And, it is kind of a funny story that Clay and I laugh about every so often.
And growing.
Yes.
I mean, the need is just exploding at this point. It's remarkable. But I mean, in our world, that's one of the most interesting things that we get exposure to, is seeing how all these different businesses create a lifestyle for their owners, for their entrepreneurs and their employees. And it's just, I mean, you find a need and you can serve that need and you can do a good job delivering it. You can make a really good living doing that. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think, that's probably one of the things that when I'm talking to other small businesses and, even ones that don't want to hire me, they're like, I can't afford you. And something that I have held firm to from day one is think about what it is you make money doing. And the more things that don't generate money that you keep for yourself to do means that gives you less time to generate money. And what is the best use of your time? I mean, I'm a CPA. I'm a licensed CPA. But I don't want to do what Nick does for me. I don't want to do that. I don't process my own payroll. You guys do my payroll. So there are lots of things that any business owner can do. But if you think about what is the best use of your time, it probably isn't doing a lot of your own marketing, your own web development, your own accounting, your own payroll, your own legal work. Now my attorney, often says, Diane, I don't know why I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer, but I can read a legal contract, and there's, every once in a while a crazy clause that's in a client contract that it's like, can you take a look at this? And to me, that is worth every penny that I'm paying out, because it allows me to focus on what I do and what my business does. And that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give newer entrepreneurs is don't try to do it all yourself. You're not going to, there are risks that you're not going to do it right. I'm not going to say you won't do it right, but there's risks that you're not going to do it right. You're certainly not going to do it efficiently. And then you're just pulling time away from generating revenue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that not only trying to get your internal team, but your external team together, I think is pretty, that goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you said earlier you did a really good job sticking to what you know, which is sales tax. But you're an accountant. You're just like us. I get the whole kitchen sink thrown at me every day of questions, some of which I know I can answer, but it's not necessarily what I should be answering. Mm-hmm. So now that you're established, it's probably a lot easier to sort of turn away the work where you're saying, well, yes, I'm an accountant. I could do this for you. I could bill you for it, but it's not what I want to be doing, so I'm not going to do this for you. So how do you keep yourself still focused when there's money on the table from this billable work, but also your staff? How do you keep your staff from agreeing to do something that is not within the direct confines of what you guys are doing?
That's a great question, Nick. So from day one, there are two aspects of sales tax that we do not do, have never done, and will not do. But there's a little bit of an exception. So the one thing that we will hold firm that we will not do is we are not an outsourced compliance firm. So we will not prepare returns on a regular recurring basis. There is liability that comes with that. I am not insured to do that. It is a very low-priced, high-volume business, It is very time constrained. So you guys talk about busy season with it being income tax busy season. Sales tax busy season is every single month. And we just are not set up to do that. You have to set up banking and escrows and all these other sorts of things, and we just won't do that. Now, the one exception, we put systems in for people, and sometimes there is like a month lag that we haven't gotten all of the registration information from the state, so we can't have the software company that's going to do the automated filing do it. So, okay, we may have to do it for 1 month. We've got a client that is in the city of Chicago, the Chicago lease tax. The software company doesn't do that return, so we're in there every month doing that one return. So there are a couple of tiny exceptions like that we'll do, but I just am not going to. It is not fun work. I mean, you guys probably file some sales tax returns, and it's not what I want my team to be doing. It's not what I want to be doing, reviewing, and it's very time constrained. You know, you've got to get that done in about 10 days of the month, and those 10 days, if you're doing it, I mean, we partner with a firm that's all they do. And what did she tell me? I think she told me that they filed over 1 million sales tax returns last year.
Wow.
Can you imagine filing that many? I mean, they do thousands of sales tax returns a month, but she's got a team of like 75 people that's what they do. So that's the one thing we don't do. The other thing that we don't do is we don't do contingent fee work. You know, we were asked to do it early on. It's going out, it's looking for overpayments, refunds. You have to front all of your payroll because you're not going to get paid until the refund goes to the client. And it's tedious work. I did it a lot when I was at Arthur Andersen, and I just decided that's not what I'm going to do. We've had a couple of, there used to be this goofy credit here in Illinois, the manufacturer's purchase credit, that we had one client that we did it for. We did other stuff for them, and we were doing it on a contingent type of basis. Then they built a brand new plant. They wanted us to continue, or they wanted us to switch to doing it hourly because it was going to be a huge fee. And we said, okay, we'll do it hourly, but hey, it's going to be hourly from here on out because this was our one chance to kind of recoup that. You don't know if you're actually going to be profitable on that or not. So we just don't do those two types of things. When we get into, you know, we'll get questions, hey, how about income tax? Will you do our income tax? We can do about this much income tax, which is, do you have to file? Do you have Nexus? We'll tie that into it as long as it's a pretty clear thing. There's some nuances with the income tax, and we're just not to that point. But I will not prepare an income tax return. Have I looked at some income tax returns that we're filing as part of a settlement offer? I have, where some other small local firms, you know, we had somebody that it was a Texas firm, had their Texas CPA, and it was a Wisconsin return, and he forgot to do apportionment. And so he was showing more due to the state of Wisconsin in tax than he actually had revenue in Wisconsin. And so I looked at it and I said, I think something's wrong here, and sent it back and said, I don't think you owe more tax than you actually had Wisconsin revenue. So we'll do that. But we've really stayed true to, we are not an income tax firm. We are not a payroll firm. We are not, you know, but even last week, client CEO moved from Illinois to Tennessee. And how does that all work? And what should he do with his payroll? And for listeners that don't know, Tennessee doesn't have an individual income tax. So how does that work with him when part of his time is here in Illinois and part of his time is down there? So was there a little bit of advice that I did on that? Yes. Does my team do any of that? No. And that's one of the things that's really good about my team, Nick, is they know what our box is, and it's more likely that I'm going to make the exception than they're going to make the exception.
And just to forewarn listeners, there is a S Corp and partnership tax on in Tennessee, so don't think you can move your business down there and escape the state tax.
Right.
I mean, it takes a lot of trust in your employees too, though.
It does. And that goes back to the culture. So the team knows what we do, and the team knows what we stand for, and the team doesn't want to put themselves in a situation where they're being asked to do things that they aren't qualified to do. And so that's one of the things that's really great about our team, is they know that. And it'll be, like I said, it's more likely that I'm the one that's going to make the exception than them.
It's usually the business owner. They're usually guilty.
Guilty as charged.
So you do most of your billing hourly, or almost entire of your billing is hourly. Have you thought about doing any type of subscription-based billing?
So we have two types of things that we do on a fixed fee. So we do sales tax registrations. We do those on a flat fee. And we will do what's called a voluntary disclosure agreement, which is where if you have some back period liability because you haven't been taking care of your sales tax appropriately, where we'll go in and we'll negotiate a settlement with the state. So we do both of those on a flat fee. The rest of our consulting work is hourly. We're in the process right now of evaluating, because our business has shifted a little bit. Over the years, we have had as our clients the Fortune 5, so biggest companies in the world. Today, we do many more e-commerce, smaller, mid-sized businesses. And so we do a little bit more monthly kind of monitoring of their activities. So we're, but it can range. Like 1 month, it might be 15 minutes that we spend, but then they'll get a notice in that'll take us 3 hours the next month. So it's been hard for me to kind of figure that out. But where we've, our Sales Tax Institute side is where, we offer those sorts of things that would be almost subscription based. So on our online type of our training that we do, you can buy a webinar one at a time, or you can buy a year-long subscription of our webinars. So you can do that. You get a great discount, and you get 12 months of webinars. And then in 2020, it was actually in the works before COVID hit, but we launched our Sales Tax Nerd community. So we are known as the Sales Tax Nerds. And so we launched this community membership, and that is a subscription. So that's a year-long membership. Comes with a lot of training options, a portal, lots of resources. We do some networking events, for the most part virtually, but now that we're back to conferences, we call them Sales Tax Nerd meetups. So, we'll find out who is going to be at this conference that we're at, and then we all get together for drinks or lunch or something. So those are where what I would call our subscription-based revenue is coming from. But it's been hard. Again, I've grown up. I mean, I've been a sales tax consultant as a consultant for now 34 years. Sometimes I am the old dog that doesn't want to learn new tricks. And so trying to, I've been hourly billing for all of that time, that kind of moving to a different, I am fairly risk adverse, but yet I do take a lot of risks as an entrepreneur. So there's the parts where I can be less risk adverse help me deal with the times when I have to be very kind of innovative and out there and doing different things. So I balance that to keep myself from going crazy.
Well, it sounds like the Sales Tax Institute's really a progressive program. You're really selling content, which is the industry of selling your knowledge, not for an hourly fee.
Exactly.
And I think it's a really cool progression, I think, that we're making as knowledge workers. I mean, majority of the United States are knowledge-based workers. And I think it's a really great direction, because no longer are you chained to your hours worked, as now you're actually getting paid value for the knowledge that you have. I think it's a great opportunity in your space, in our space, and you're doing that on the subscription basis. And then even more so, you created a community. Like this is 2020 plus type progression. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. When I was thinking about going out and starting my business, education has been a big part of everything I've done, back to my high school jobs when I was the person that trained the new employees. So I've been kind of an educator in everything I've done. And back in the mid-90s, there was really only one, what I would call truly reliable source for sales tax education. And that was one organization that you had to be a member of, that was a sales tax professional association. Sure, you could get a class from the Illinois CPA Society, maybe back then. You can today. organizations like Lorman and some of those others. But, I went to one of those, and it was somebody that was, I don't know, what was their degree in? English, I think it was. And, he just read the materials that somebody wrote, and I sat there for half a day and had pages upon pages of all of the wrong information that he gave out. And so as I started the business, I knew I wanted to start a training business. So I've had Sales Tax Institute from day one. So it is 26 years old. And we've trained over that time. At this point, I think we're probably close to 5,000 different people that have gone through our training. And, when we started, we were only live in person, because that's all you did back in the 90s. We'd have multiple classes a year in different areas around the country. We had 3 different classes. We dropped our half-day class because we just weren't getting the attendance. And we started teaching webinars in 2012, if you can believe that. So, we were kind of forward-thinking, doing that. We went to on-demands. We actually, before 2012, probably in 2008, we actually had created a self-study online class. It was very expensive to build those back then. Today, you can do it a lot easier and cheaper. We just weren't getting the revenue out of that, so we stopped trying to keep that up to date just because the costs were so high. We don't offer CPE for our on-demand material, our on-demand training, but we're a licensed CPE provider through NASBA, which is the accreditation board for accountants. So we are able to do all that, and then we've just kind of migrated, after the Wayfair decision, the big Supreme Court decision that changed sales tax. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, that's why now Amazon charges you tax on all of your orders. That exploded our business in 2018. And, the funny thing is we were teaching our basic level class the day the decision came out. So we teach Nexus on day 1 of the class, and the case came out on day 2. So while we're trying to teach, we're also, all of the faculty, we're trying to digest the case. And then we had made a promise to our audience that the day the decision came out, we would go live. And so the second day is the one that I teach almost all day long. There's like an hour and a half break that somebody else is teaching and I don't need to be in the room. So we're finding a place somewhere in the hotel where I can go and it be quiet. And I did a Facebook Live. I had not yet read the entire case because I was teaching almost the whole rest of the day. And I went live for almost an hour and was taking questions on the Facebook Live stream.
Wow.
Just answering them like that, which was a little unnerving. It's still on our website. I go back every once in a while and listen to it. And I'm like, yeah, I think I did do pretty good. That's exactly what it said, even though I wasn't 100% sure. But, then we stayed late that night to kind of debrief with the class and reteach them what was now new. And so that was in June. And that class we only teach every June. And we said, we can't wait a year to provide education on this. So within 2.5 months, we launched a completely new product, our Sales Tax Jumpstart class, which is a 9-week online class. We put a kind of a feeler out. We said, we don't know if we're going to do this. We might do this. We don't know what it'll look like. But if we did something, would you be interested? We didn't give them pricing, nothing. We had like 250 people respond yes. So we're like, okay, we got to build something. So in about 3.5 weeks, we figured out what we were going to call it. We figured out what it was going to look like. We figured out the pricing. We put it up online, and we were going to limit it to 25 people because part of it was a lot of one-on-one with me. It was going to be a live taught, 2 hours a week class with me. And the 250 people that signed up in advance that said they were interested, they got it before it was available to the public. We sold out the 25 in about 36 hours.
Wow.
We're like, all right, what do we do now? So we're like, okay, well, maybe we'll let it go to 35. Yeah, that sold out. So we ended up cutting off marketing for it. And we ended up, I think it was with 51 people that bought it. We offer it twice a year now, and we just finished our 8th offering, I think it is, and we exceeded. We had the most people. We had 54 people in the class.
Wow.
And it's just been great. It's an opportunity where certainly during COVID, it was amazing. As we had to pivot our live in-person classes to online, we already had been doing online training because of that. We had the webinars, but this was a different type. So all of those things have really helped us. And I like to think that I was forward thinking enough. That's probably part of it. Part of it has been a little bit of luck. And I think that's what as business owners we have to remember is we might have some visionary things that maybe aren't fully baked, but follow them through, and then with some luck, you might actually hit a gold mine.
Definitely. Yeah. Most unconventional things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this class, is this a full-time class for somebody who wants to run a sales tax operation within a business, or is this like a part-time class where maybe I'm a internal bookkeeper or internal accountant at a business and I just need to be more nimble in how to handle all these situations?
So our Jumpstart class, which is the one I just talked about, that one is definitely geared for the latter.
Okay.
It is for people that are bookkeepers. We've had a controller. I don't think we've ever had a CEO in that. We've had some CEOs come to our basics class of smaller businesses. Certainly a lot of CFOs have come to our training. We have advisors. So we have bookkeepers or accountants that are in firms that do this type of work for their clients. We teach our competitors. Mm-hmm. We've got Big Four, top 20 and all the way down of people. We've got people that are specialized sales tax consulting firms that we are their training, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about, that I'm training my competitors. But the way I look at it, and part of it is why I have two brands. My consulting is done under Yetter Tax. My training is done under Sales Tax Institute. Not everybody knows that they're together. They may more now today. But, I very, very deliberately wanted to make that distinction because there isn't enough training opportunities out there. And particularly for the smaller firms, it is still these tax organizations that you have to be a member of that provide some of the more rigorous sales tax training. And I wanted to be able to fill that opening, that niche for practitioners that are not going to join, one of the large organizations, and for businesses that it is somebody's part-time job. They're responsible for sales tax for 2 days a month, but they're responsible for so many other things the rest of the time. And where can they go to get training and education? And that's where I think we really fill the void. And then we also fill the void that we train practicality. So, for example, our Jumpstart class, every week that we train a topic, there is homework for them to go back to their business. Now, the practitioners, they pick a client that they're going to do it for, but they go back and they then have to apply what we just taught them to their business and then come back the next week and we debrief the homework. I don't grade it. I don't review it. But it gives them an opportunity to kind of take that knowledge and figure out how to apply it to their business. And to me, that's the greatest recommendation we get and comment that we get on our evaluations of all of our training is I could go back to my office and do my job better. And that's what our goal is in all of our training is we don't want you to just have the theory. Certainly we have to give you some theory, but we want you to go back and be able to apply it to what you do and it makes sense to you.
I think that's a very important resource for businesses that are venturing outside of their home state. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at migrating into many different states, salestaxinstitute.com. salestaxinstitute.com. I mean, it's so important. I can't tell you how many clients are struggling with that.
Well, I just with my interaction with clients, I just see that there is a lot more online providers, and there's so many ambiguities as to how this gets done, and that is just a huge resource for them to log into and take a look at. There's softwares out there, but it doesn't give you the knowledge that you need to apply it correctly to that software.
Right. And, and I've talked more about our training and things that we generate revenue from. But one of the things that is very important to me and to our business, and it is the culture of our firm, is one of our values is giving back. And so we actually have a lot of very comprehensive free resources. So there's a lot of information that if you've got some knowledge and background, and even if you don't, if you're willing to kind of figure it out, between charts that we have on our website, white papers, blog posts, FAQs, there's a lot of stuff that you can get without paying us a penny. And that is something that is really important to me, to make sure that we're making those resources available. I've had my competitors from large firms come up to me and say, when I have people ask me, yeah, we have a chart on our site, I don't trust it. I trust yours. And they send people to my site.
Wow.
Government people have come up to me and said, we go to your site. And that's a great compliment when, the information that you're trying to put out there from the governments, that the state governments go to your site to see what's right, or see what other states are doing as they're trying to get their legislation in place.
Wow. That's huge. That's influencing other state governments.
Yeah.
And I know recently, or maybe it wasn't so recently, didn't you have to go do something really big in front of the Supreme Court? Can you talk about that?
I can. It wasn't the Supreme Court, but I was invited to testify before the U.S. Senate Finance Committee about the impact of all of these sales tax changes, what the impact is on small businesses. And that was an honor of a lifetime.
That's so cool.
So that was in June. So it was a little nerve-wracking. You don't get a whole lot of advance notice. I had been talking to some of the staffers from about January. They started having conversations. I have had over the last probably 2 years conversations with the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, and had been interviewed by them on a number of different topics. And I'm also very involved in a couple of organizations that also had recommended me, partially because of my ability to really communicate from a practical point of view without a lot of the legal complexities or legal language that sometimes everyday people don't completely connect with. And so I had been talking to the staffers of the Senate Finance Committee, and then they came back and said, so we are going to have a hearing, and we really want you. And I'm like, okay, how does that work? And they said, well, it's in 3 weeks. And I went, oh, and they said, you need to submit written testimony. And I'm like, okay, when is that due? And so I luckily got some help from some good friends. And so I think there's a 15 to 20 page paper out there on the Senate Finance Committee website, and then invited to go and testify. So you get 5 minutes to give an opening statement, and then you just get peppered with questions. So it was me, 2 small business owners, somebody from the Government Accounting Office, and then the executive director of the Streamlined Sales Tax Organization, which is a quasi-governmental organization of which there's 24 states that are members. So he and I were the people, our voice was the one of, here's what multiple states are doing. He talked a little bit more from the state perspective. I was the one that kind of gave a lot of the information about, here's what I think the states should do. So a lot of my recommendations, the GAO actually just issued their final report about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so a lot of my proposals that the senators actually asked, what should the federal Congress do about this, made it into the GAO report. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And that's going to bat for small business owners.
That's what I try to do. And this streamlined sales tax organization I'm pretty active in, and have really tried to make more resources available. Part of that organization, the member states, of which Wisconsin is one, Illinois is not, they have to publish information so it is easier for businesses to know what they need to do to comply. And so we pushed really hard, and I was the lead business person on a new part of some of the material that they publish related to all of the remote seller and marketplace collection and all of those rules. And what is coming is going to be a new resource related to exemption certificates. So when you are making an exempt sale, or you as a buyer are trying to make exempt purchases, what is the documentation that you have to give, and what exemptions actually exist in the different states? So that is in process. The questionnaire has been approved. The states are working on it, and that will be coming out sometime next year. And then we made a lot of really good changes to the uniform certificate that all 24 member states can accept, and got it cleaned up so that it's easier for non-tax people to actually understand how to use it.
That's huge. Being involved in sales tax audits, that is probably one of the number one pain points. Receipts. Receipts is number one. It's a simple one to resolve, but hard to get by.
Yes.
But the exemption certificates is probably number two, chasing those down.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm really proud of, is the ability to help businesses be compliant. Even I'm dealing with a Wisconsin audit right now, and I know some of you guys are doing that too. And they're good people, but they are hard people to deal with. And on certain issues, and to be able to have those conversations with senior people in the departments of revenue is something that is really valuable. And they actually really appreciate, I've been told on a couple different occasions, they really appreciate my voice in those meetings, because they're not out to get you. They end up getting you because they don't have the perspective of the small business. They don't understand what you don't understand. And that is what I try to bring is, hey, this is reality. This is what these businesses are having to figure out, and let's figure out a better way to give them that information.
So important. I don't think our listeners can thank you enough for what you're doing for them. And they probably don't understand it. And I'm hoping after listening today, they have a better understanding and appreciation of how much effort goes into protecting small business owners, especially their perspective on these subjects.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because there are, some of my peers that are very much against the economic nexus rules and the collection rules. I'm not. I actually, was supportive of the Supreme Court decision, supportive of the states filing the legislation. But I think there are a lot of gotchas. The difference in the rules between Illinois and Wisconsin, for example, they were very similar in terms of how they measured that economic nexus. But Wisconsin realized that using a transaction count or a number of invoices as the measurement of 200 invoices is what Wisconsin first enacted back in 2018. And they dropped that. And so now you don't have economic nexus in Wisconsin until you make $100,000 in sales. Illinois hasn't dropped that 200 transaction count. So there's a lot of very small businesses that are not in Illinois that are being pulled into Illinois. And Illinois is one of the most complex states to deal with, particularly if you're not an Illinois business now, that it makes it very, very hard. And so one of the recommendations I made to Congress was get rid of this transaction count. There's also, where are the gotchas? If you have an employee, a resident, like my business, I technically have nexus in a bunch of states because of all my employees. Now, what I sell isn't taxable for sales tax, Nick gets to deal with all my income tax returns in all those states. So, I am compliant on that side of it, but there's certain states that I am not going to get an employee in because it will make me subject to sales tax. And watching out for that and saying, one of the things I said to Congress is let's get rid of, it's not just where do you have an employee, where do you have inventory? Today, fulfillment centers. And if you sell on Amazon, the Amazon warehouses, and if you're using the FBA program, how many of your clients go to trade shows? How many of your clients are in businesses that they go and they do in-person sales solicitation, or they go and they do installations or repairs? All of those temporary visits are physical presence, which predates the economic nexus, and also means that the economic nexus doesn't matter. So there are states, the state of Texas, you go into the state of Texas for one day and you are now subject to Texas sales tax. And so many businesses never realize that. So when the economic nexus came in, it raised the awareness of sales tax. But a lot of what we've done over the last, 4 years is now going in and negotiating these settlements with states, because the companies then realized, oh my gosh, I should have been collecting sales tax for the last 20 years. If I get caught, I'm out of business. And so that is what I think really needs to get addressed, is those gotchas. I have a California audit pending on a client that it's $1 million audit because they had inventory in California going back to 2012 when the Amazon warehouse opened. It's a $25 million year business, and we've got $1 million assessment sitting with California.
Wow. I was just thinking in my head of listener, if you haven't checked out what Diane has available already, just listening to this, you have to go and check it out, because I think the complexity of sales tax, I mean, like income tax, every state's just different. And it can just drive you mad trying to figure out who's doing what and when, and what you need to do and how you need to attack it and file and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely overwhelming. And like I said, I think there's a growing number of clients that are selling things multi-state. I mean, 20 years ago, I think the amount compared to today is minimal. And it's just so many people are now. I mean, I'm just reeling through my head right now of clients that I have. I'm like, wow, I got to check on some things here.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that you really need to think about is it isn't just if you sell stuff.
Yeah.
If you sell digital goods, if you sell software, if you sell music, if you sell games, any of that sort of stuff. And then if you sell services, Illinois does not tax many services. The state of Wisconsin does. The state of Iowa does. There are states that tax human resources recruiting services, credit check. So there's a lot of crazy, if you're in the marketing business, web developers. We've got a lot of people that web development. City of Chicago, they tax non-possessory computer leases. So that's SaaS, and, they've been taxing that since the mid-'80s. So there's a lot of crazy things when you look at these across state lines, and it isn't just selling tangible things. Before we got started, Eric and I were talking about NFTs, and that's the new thing. Wisconsin just published something last month about NFTs and their positions with that. And so all of these newfangled, cryptocurrency, that's subject to sales tax in some states.
Wow.
When you sell cryptocurrency. But if you're a cryptocurrency miner and you're in Kentucky, there's an exemption for the electricity to run your servers that's doing your mining. That's how crazy it is. And all of these things run around in my head. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, I'd encourage you, go out to our website. We've got a lot of great information. I'm assuming you'll put the link in the show notes. And
definitely invaluable resources.
So we're out there. We really want to try to help as many people as possible. Know that we're there as a resource if you need more help, but we really try to put a lot of stuff out there on our website.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think the amount of information that you provide is invaluable. So
well,
it was a great opportunity to speak with you today.
pleasure. It's been great chatting with you guys. And, I still have a hard time calling you guys Kazan. I'm still going to call you Hamlin. Have been instrumental to our business succeeding and continuing to be here. And my big point is don't think you have to do it all. Bring in people that will help you and support you, and these guys are great at doing that.
Thanks, Diane.
Yes, thank you.
Listeners, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. You can hear more real stories from real business owners about what it takes to make it in business by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you like what you hear, leave a review and a 5-star rating. This podcast has been brought to you by Kaizen CPAs and Advisors, providing advisory and accounting services to help you grow your business. Learn more at kaizencpas.com.